Yeah, so we can open the house for questions.
Sir, on your last point, how can we have a how can we have a sense of justice in a community at the same time we are having these oppressive structures like caste, gender inequality, and the people who are inhabiting in the far flung areas. So how can we make sense if people can at the same time have the sense of justice that they can feel they can have the basic decency or empathy for the other people's grievances or suffering. At the same time, they are invaded so much into this uh, caste, caste universe or their patriarchal uh, ideologies. How can we make sense?
So therefore, I think I'm coming to the conclusion that we need not to have a theory of justice. We need to have a theory of injustice. And from there, we should move to theory of justice. So if there is injustice, and there are many kinds of injustice, then you can fight. Like classical example, when Dhritarashtra invited Sanjay and Vidur asked him why there is a war. He said, war is there due to injustice. He said, what is injustice? He said, absence of justice. He didn't give a theory of justice to begin with. He said, absence of justice is injustice. Then he asked, what is justice in this case? Then he said that what you don't want for yourself, you should not do it to others. Very Rawlsian in a way. So I think if you start with injustice, fight against injustice, then redefine the justice. That is what people generally do. People don't work with the theory of justice, they work with theory of injustice. That's what probably Gopal Guru is now working on, theory of injustice.
Talked about collective consciousness, that there is some collective consciousness and people later draw from it. Why does this collective consciousness emerge only in certain in certain contexts or in certain period of time? Like for example, we had an Indian national movement where all the great ideas of Tagore, Gandhi, and others have emerged. So why does it happen only in certain events in history? Which acts as a source of selective consciousness for them. What is special about these concepts?
I think good point. Crisis. The moments of crisis. See, how do human minds work? We all are sitting in the room. We are not thinking of the way to go out. Where there is no crisis, we know the door is open. If the door is closed, then we will start reflecting how to go out, isn't it? So the moment there's a crisis, human minds start thinking how to come out from that. Who knew about CJP? CJP? Cockroach Janata Party. No idea. Out of the blue it emerged. And it emerged in a big way. Such a powerful government is in trouble. So I think this is what happens in the moment of crisis. People start thinking. That is why I think, and that's another point, that this moment, I think, is the worst of the time and best of the time. This very creative time because the dialogues have opened up again. That's the last part of that series, I think. The dialogues have opened up. Never, ever, I think, one community wanted to know about the other community more than now they are wanting. Isn't it? So much of public debate about everything is happening. So I have a feeling that we are probably standing at the end of time, as Zizek calls it. The time that started with enlightenment has come to an end. And it is a very Machiavellian moment in the sense that Machiavelli was probably standing on that transition. So we are also standing at that transition. So something big is going to emerge, it seems. It can't go on like this. And what big, that is one of the reasons why I think we need to engage with other knowledge traditions. That this is the moment when the Western knowledge tradition is exhausted in itself. And this is not me saying, all big philosophers are saying that there is a big problem. And the root of the big problem, I think, is I'm not very trained on that, but I think is Cartesian dualism, as they are saying. The culture that Cartesian dualism created, that is coming to an end. And where are the resources? The West has burnt, the modernity in the West has burnt all the resources. सब कुछ हो रहा है वहाँ पे. So symbolically, I say that if you look at the literature in the West, Why do you think Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code became so popular? Many such books you will find, Celestine Prophecy, Da Vinci Code, the story is similar. That some knowledge is hidden somewhere and everybody is there to look for that knowledge, but they burned their knowledge. They burned their what is called primitive communities knowledge. Probably Asia has not done that. We have not burned them. We still have tribals. US does not have tribals. Look at the way US killed their tribals and the knowledge and celebrated that too. We have not done that. So this is Asian society, I think, at the moment is one of the most creative society where a lot of new resources could be produced. So maybe this crisis, the global philosophical crisis, as I'm calling it, is going to also initiate what I call the Asian movement. It is an Asian movement that's emerging. So people sitting on this region of the world, they have this intellectual responsibility to engage with own traditions plus their traditions, do a new churning, and bring out new philosophies.
Yeah, I know. It's, when you are proposing that, when you are saying that the liberating aspect, so how actually you are proposing that? Who will determine that? And do you approaching any kind of whether there will be a consensus? This is the kind of liberating. Like for example, you mentioned on the word of backwardness. So, if for somebody or for some community or some social group, uh, this is not the condition of backwardness. This is not like you mentioned that in tribal communities, there is no such kind of thinking that this is backwardness. So, in that condition, that how actually the liberating aspect to be determined.
Yeah, so,
So adding to her query and also taking the debate forward, there are two kinds of paradox. One is the question about who defines what backwardness is. So, for example, even if we forget about backwardness, there are these normalized terms that we use, which you also use, like modernity and tradition. Now, we take it given that these are the ideas that had their post-enlightenment birth and they were structured in a very definitive way about what modernity means and what tradition means. And then they generally become a part of our everyday understanding of about modern and tradition. So on the one hand, we are talking about democratizing knowledge systems. On the other hand, we are using these essentialized understandings or concepts or categories to which even if we are not very conscious about it, it becomes very judgmental at times. So how do we negotiate with that? Another paradox is about this idea about protecting knowledge. Uh, Knowledge is not just about what we have, but it also has to do a lot with in terms of practices for that matter. And I was thinking about Gandhi's critique of Ayurveda for that matter. And two essential points that Gandhi makes. A, obviously, that it has been overtaken by quacks, and so it does not have enough R&D. But he makes a more pointed criticism where he says that, look, although he's a critic of allopathy at large, but he says that allopathy, at least allopathy has done one good thing, is that cheap medicines are available largely to people in general, which is not the case with Ayurveda. And the reason being that they do not do enough R&D, so the production could not be escalated, and hence it does not reach to the common people. It is protected in some form as if it is some hidden treasure. And then what happens to such knowledge system is that we start questioning or doubting the efficacy of, even in current times, you were talking about Ayurveda, general medicines of Ayurveda, because it uses a lot of silver and gold, the average cost is very high. So it does not reach to the common people, common masses. So until unless that knowledge is available for all to consume, there always will be doubts about its efficacy. So it's also a question. So on the one hand, protection of knowledge may be a good thing for tribal groups or other communities because it remains protected therefore, but also if it is not produced in a way that it really changes the lives of people, does that knowledge has a value in itself? These are the two things.
Okay, I continue. To man, to ma'am's question, how far this idea of progress has forced the indigenous peoples into this march of development, that they are forced to join this train of progress. Otherwise, they will be remain forever marginalized, excluded from the mainstream progress.
One thing just I just so quickly trying to add that it is not about only that determining material progress, like you as we discussed about justice, like uh, getting that you talked about the realization of injustice and approaching some mechanism to get the justice. So even also this framework, like appealing to the village, whatever uh, uh, institutional mechanism is there, and the hierarchy. Suppose I am the concerned person is not satisfied with the judgment, then appealing, like whatever available in the modern state framework. So in that regard, if we observe communities, particularly tribal communities, there are practices that they are not believing in the appealing provision, particularly in a hierarchical ladder. So in that also, a kind of a consensus existing among the communities that okay, no, this is not the way we should uh, go. Rather, we need to sort out all these things within us.
So there are three questions three different questions.
स्टेट की जो भूमिका दिखाई दे रही है जिसकी जो इशारा कर रहे हैं पर्टिकुलरली सबको के लिए अवेलेबल नहीं ये कौन करेगा वो अगर नॉलेज को इंक्लूड नहीं करना चाहते हैं कम्युनिटी स्टेट भी कैसा उसको ठीक करे और स्टेट के लोग कैसे करेंगे
Three things are there. One is that exploitation and how do you consider what will be the negotiation for justice? How will you do that? What I think is a classical statement by Marx is in a way best point through which one can judge what is right, what is wrong. That's judgmental rationality, as Raghav says that freedom of one should be freedom of all, and freedom of all should be freedom of one. So if that is the criteria when you are judging something, whether it's good for community or not, the more transparent you are in that evaluation, better judgment you can arrive at. So what is that freedom or liberation? That is where we need to debate. And I have a long argument about that, where I try to connect three, four theories together and arrive on the idea of liberation. One is Marcuse's idea of liberation. And there are common elements. Marx's idea of alienation and Gandhi's idea of Purusharth. So if you combine them together, you find a kind of theory of liberation. And in one line, what does liberation mean? Liberation means that every human being has a right to realize the highest possible potential one has. So if there are structures of domination that is stopping us from realizing that, that is injustice. That is where we need to engage with them. And if communities are doing that, we need to fight against the communities. There is no sacrosanct community. I'm not in favor of supporting Khap Panchayat, please. I think that must be volunteer needed. As long as Khap Panchayat is doing my welfare, providing me those structures through which I can be liberated. If Khap Panchayat decides that I will give 200 scholarships to the community, I'm very happy with that. But if Khap Panchayat tells me that you can't do this and that, which is legitimate thing to do, I would deny that. So therefore, these are the struggles that we have to carry on. These are the puzzles. So therefore, when I'm talking of knowledge system, I am by no means suggesting that we need to go back to tradition. I am by no means saying that tradition is great. I'm only suggesting that we are embedded in something which we cannot ignore. That is there already. unless we fight with that, unless we engage with that, we will not be able to move on. That by rejecting, we can't move on. By fully accepting, we can't move on. So we have to engage in a dialogue with that.
Talk about restructuring,
Exactly. Absolutely. Everything, including religion. I would say all religions need, and they have been refashioned, redesigned all the time. So everything has to be done from there at that angle. I mean, any technological intervention requires that kind of redesign. The universities probably will have to respond to AI. You have no option. You can't stop it. It's going to be there. Maybe my
have to ban it. That's my position.
But you will not be able to. You will not be able to ban it. That's the problem. But you can't ban it. You know, the problem with technology.
Ban it because it's being pushed by a few capitalists, Elon Musk, and the others. Now the point is, this is an existential threat to humanity. It's dumbness to say that this is inevitable, which if you say it's inevitable, you're saying, well, our end is inevitable. And my point is, I mean, I would never thought of myself as a Luddite. As far as AI is concerned, the damn thing needs to be down cost completely banned.
No,
You cannot regulate, adjust, accommodate, appreciate.
No, I think that's a big challenge how to go about it. But can you remember the history of technology? If you look at, we had a 2-day very interesting, intense discussion on philosophy and technology. The history of technology, if you look at, every moment with the emergence of new technology, there has been such challenge, and we have conceded to that challenge, and we have recovered that trauma. We have did something. We have done something to overcome that. Forget about AI. Just remember television. How traumatic used to be television.
I mean, Jeffrey is the guy who created it.
I know, yeah.
Saying that he would not have done it if he knew the implications. So my point is, politically speaking, I always believe that technology must be politically regulated.
Agree.
Right?
Agree.
Now, the problem has been technology is all about markets and supply creating its own demand. Now, in a situation of this kind, there are a few oligarchs, Musk and company. In a situation like this, the only people's responsibility is to end it. Because you cannot have a regulated AI, you cannot have an adjusted AI, you can't have an accommodated AI. This is the thing that represents something very dangerous. Now, this is unlike all technologies we've seen so far.
I agree with you. The
But
first
you
time,
can also have a banned AI.
Why not? I tell you, why not?
Because
First
it has
time-
already percolated your life world.
No, I'll tell you, it's percolated because we've accepted the logic of the market.
That is
The
true.
market
So
must
then
be subservient to
the
human
enemy is the market. So that's what the fight is. Then it's fine. Then I have no problem.
What is the market? The market creates, I mean, this is Say's law. Supply creates its own demand. Did we need, I mean, I didn't need this damn thing called smartphone.
But we have got it finally.
Now, this is why politics, I mean, I'm.
No, how does that survive? You know, I tell you, how did it survive? I remember Ujjwal and Apurvanand, they did not keep mobile.
Yeah, they used
I
No, not even that. I used to call them on landline. They would say, "बात नहीं हो सकती है." कई दिन तो मैंने कहा देखिए एक समय में mobile they have to keep. Ask them to buy that. Finally, there was some crisis in the family, and we were not accessible. So I think all technologies are born out of the human necessity also. Now you have to regulate that. How do we?
I mean, it's the inevitable.
Could be, yeah. I agree with you.
Maybe on some Indian politics.
Sorry, let's get back to that.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I mean, I have famous opposition we can do.
Yes. That's why I'm very happy to see you here.
No, my opposition is not conclusive, it is contextual. 16, 17 years ago, I remember reading Rajiv Bhargav on do we need an Indian politics. My response to that was like saying, do we need a nuclear bomb? Now, my point about Indian political theory is that it arose at the height of the Hindutva hegemonic movement. Precisely because it arose at that time, I thought this is something to be rejected. Now, at a moment when perhaps, hopefully, we can see the Hindutva hegemonic movement, subsiding, and some points were made earlier, political theory arises in the crucible of change, in a situation of crisis. Now, you mentioned the cockroach protests. We can clearly discern straws in the wind, that the Hindutva hegemonic movement is now kind of subsiding, passing away. We can feel it. Now, my point is that when it comes to political theory, it arises at those moments of acute crisis. You can't have a political theory for the basis of a kind of a chauvinistic claim. Now, the thing about this idea of Indian political theory is that it's not clear about what India is. It's not clear about the idea of India. You made this point. India is not the nation state India. Okay, this is a very recent development. India as a civilizational understanding overlaps, meshes into, seeps into lots of other civilizations. So the Achaemenid Persian dynasty
came all the way up to Punjab. So the problem really with the idea of Indian political theory is that it's a statist, nation statist project. And as a result of which I've always, I mean, I'm not saying I'm opposed to Indian political theory as I said conclusively, but it's contextual. And I think that a lot of people started talking about it because the nation state was pushing this agenda. Because we are stepping into some moment of greatness or some kind of a claim to, Vishwaguru status, we also needed Indian political theory. So any Indian political theory claim aligned or allied with the idea of the state claiming some kind of a Vishwaguru status, I think is very dangerous. So that's the point that I do want to make. Let's come back to civilizations, because you did mention some of these points. I think the thing about civilizations is that there's a certain kind of a capaciousness to civilizations. Now, the thing about Indian political theory that I've noted is, in the way that it's been formulated most of the times, is that it has a certain kind of insular logic to it. It doesn't have a cosmopolitanism that I think the globalized times that we live in require. All right, so if an Indian political theory can speak in terms of a cosmopolitanism, I would be completely for it, but not in terms of the kind of an exclusivist, insular indigeneity that it has lapsed into. So quite often I find that it lapses into a kind of uncritical celebration of an indigeneity, and it's kind of imploding inwards. And I've often felt that any political theory must have a rooted cosmopolitanism rather than an indigeneity. Now, to come back to the whole question of Asia, I mean, I don't know if it's an Asian moment or not. From some parts of the world, the kind of response to what we are seeing right now, of course, it's capitalism. Of course, it's American expansionism, right? But mostly, let's come back to AI. The only intelligent response to AI, which is threatening jobs, threatening lives, I mean, robotic warfare is going to look horrible. And the Israelis are the ones who are leading. I mean, usually the Israelis are the biggest culprits around these days. But I think we need to factor in how dangerous this is. You could have a robotic police force, algorithmically programmed to kill you because of certain political views that you hold. So I'm just trying to say that it's not a question of accommodating anymore. It's not a question of, I think this idea of inevitability has to be gotten. And if an Indian political theory can respond to the existential challenge of AI and also the kind of inequalities that capitalism has created, I don't see that from most people who are talking about Indian political theory. I don't see that coming. We are living right now through one of the most unequal phases of human history. How many political theories have talked about that? How many people have talked about the need for a socialism that is able to counter these kinds of inequalities that we are talking? And there we see it. So that's my of course.
That whether we are talking about Indian political theory due to a rise of right-wing politics, or right-wing politics is using these sentiments in its favor. I have a very strong feeling, and I have evidences to suggest. As I said, that our project started in 2003. The paper I introduced, if you remember, is 2010, when right-wing politics was not that dominant. Not.
If you
could be, but
into history, right-wing politics has always been a part and parcel of Indian way of life.
No, the point is this. See, the two things in this. One, that is one point that you see in the freedom struggle. They are also struggling for this. That what is Indian? As Partha Chatterjee says, that if you are using the language of your enemy, then how will you fight your enemy? That's a thematic and problematic issue that he defines. So I think this crisis has been there not only in India, all over the world, wherever colonialism went. I think they had this crisis that what shall we do with our own knowledge that through which we survived. So this is pre-right-wing, post-right-wing, I guess. And right-wing, I say something else. I say that right-wing probably uses this anxiety, the anxiety that people had, in its own favor. Unfortunately, what left abandoned everything that right-wing touched. And that is a dangerous game. Unless we see the differentiation between these approaches, I said, the identity assertion approach and indigenous approach, and then any new approach that you think, how do you deal with this? You will not be able to deal with that at all. So right-wing will have its own way very easily if you abandon all your grounds for them. So including religion, I think. So, and that's how liberation theology fought against right-wing in Latin America. So that's how I think liberation theology started, not in Latin America, but in India. look at the history of Indian political thought, modern Indian political thought, how they dealt with religion, and finally reaching to this, that rules and principles. So therefore, I would suggest that let's not be emotional about everything that somebody touches. Let's be more rational about thinking. How do people think about that? And why do people get attracted towards that? Maybe if I have to mobilize people, I will not mobilize what I think with that. I will mobilize what you think. I can probably capture what you think and I will use that for my benefit. I think that's what has happened. This is one thing. Second, that on the AI and Asian response, we presented a paper on cognitive freedom. Sorry. Yeah, please.
Sigma University.
Mm.
And the Chinese are pretty good at AI. Right? So Kimi K3 is a kind of AI model.
I know.
And is that a validation response to the crisis of the world that we are looking at?
No, I think that probably Asian response to this question of AI and how do we, I mean, we had Rakesh and me presented a paper, Varun, three of us, on
I also wanted to comment.
Cognitive freedom. And the biggest problem due to AI is the cognitive freedom. That our cognition is hacked now. So how do we retain our cognitive freedom in this crisis? And there, I think Asia has a lot of resources. The resources that Rumi has, and that is one of the reasons why Rumi is becoming so popular in the West. I think that's also a response to AI, because they are losing that connectivity. For instance, one of the favorite novels is Welbeck's Atomized, that the French society, French writer, yeah, how people are atomized in France, and then the result is what? Result is looking for relationality. The relationality, I think, is Asia's key word. And response to AI is only relationality. Otherwise, making sense of myself, either I make it through AI or I make it through you. So if there is no theory of making my sense through you, then I will shift to AI. That's what is happening in the West, because it's individualism, hyper individualism. In Asia, probably even now, this relationality is there. Therefore, even if community is bad, I think there is a sense of community that works very, very well. And that is where is the answer to AI. Not that I don't think that AI can be completely abolished or banned. This is my hunch that no technology till now, including genome editing, which has been stopped till now, can be fully banned in human society. But there are so many forces, and as you rightly said, the capital has interest in that. So capital will use that. How do we challenge that is the question. The response to AI in India is creating a new kind of school. I'm sure you are aware of that. The new schools are in which students are very costly schools where students are supposed to get into agriculture and plantation. But Goa has a very big school of this kind, very high fee, around say 10 lakhs per annum.
They have been existing for long, but if you see Shaolin and others,
it's becoming now popular.
Yeah, Tamil Nadu,
the elite,
Rishi Valley.
Yeah, no, more than Rishi Valley. Rishi Valley is about no classrooms.
Yeah,
this is about working with nature. So, and the fee is very high. So, elites are sending their children there now. Yeah. In fact,
it started much before AI came into picture.
Could be, but these are technological responses.
The idea of Asia's response, I think the point that she was making is absolutely correct. That if you see in the AI age, there are two central players. One is America, but the second player is actually China. So so when we are saying Asia is going to respond, so do you think China is going to manage this crisis much better than the Western world?
I'm only saying that Asia has resources. Europe doesn't have even resources for that. Like Europe does not have resources for dealing with inter-community relationships. They have no history. So they are in mess. We have resources. We have been dealing with that. Similarly, I think Asia still has resources. As I said, that suddenly Rumi is the bestseller in the West.
Mind if I think about the whole
No.
There's something orientally obscure and mysterious or mystical.
I'm not, I don't think I'm saying that. I'm simply saying that probably we should look at them as available resources to humanity. That's it. I'm not saying that this is something that can solve all the problems. It's not, I'm not saying that. I'm only saying that the techniques of dealing with human mind, Asians have better resources for that. I'll tell you why. A simple argument is, in the West, I've just conducted a survey of the philosophers in the West. What are they doing? Out of 70 top philosophers, 50 are working on mind-body relationship. And they have no clue what to do. Because what they did under the Cartesian dualism, they entered into smallest part of the body, minutest part of the body. They know everything of the body. But they have no idea how does the mind work. How does therefore you will see huge number of huge amount of investment on consciousness studies. Now, Asian traditions, there are so many traditions in Asia, not one or two, so many of them, which have very rich resource on consciousness, on a mind. So that's where my hope lies. That when you have a fight between humans and machines, the advantage that humans have is of the reflexive mind. And the claim to reflexive mind, reclaiming reflexive mind, is reclaiming cognitive freedom. And for that, where are the resources? What shall we get? They treat your mind as brain. You know, there's a famous story I always say, you know, रविंद्र रे नक्सलाइट हाँ तो एक बार मैंने उनसे पूछा कि आपको देखा नहीं छुट्टियों में कहाँ थे गर्मी में कहा वो हर बार मेरे हॉस्पिटल जाना पड़ता है गर्मी में हाँ सो आई सेड व्हाट व्हाई इधर वो मेरा कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो जाता है मेंटल प्रॉब्लम होता है मैंने कहा आप ठीक हो आप बोला क्या ठीक होंगे आई हैव अ प्रॉब्लम इन माय माइंड दे आर ट्रीटिंग माय ब्रेन सो नथिंग विल हैपन I think they treat your mind as brain. George Sorel, philosophy of mind. John Searle, philosophy of mind. Yeah. So he kept fighting lifelong, saying that the brain is important. So I think they don't have the idea of mind. There's no Angrezi translation of man. There's no English word for man. So I think even in terms of conceptual categories that Asian traditions have, those conceptual categories are very rich. Which till now what we have done, there was a conference in IAC, the title was Rendering Indian Philosophy in English Language. So we have been doing that all the time, instead of really philosophizing ourselves, using our own resources. My only request to Indian intellectuals is that do not treat Indian tradition as something superb, but only see that as collective resource of humanity, which you have access to. It is bodhgamya word, bodhgamya. So it is more bodhgamya for you compared to anybody else. Like a Russian philosopher came to me and asked me that I want to do Indian philosophy. I asked him, have you ever meditated? He said, never. I said, no, you never meditate. No, we don't have this word, meditation. So I think this is so common to us. Anybody in India or Asia would say that, well, let me meditate. This is what Foucault says, what is lost in after Greek society was technology of the self. I think somehow, for some reason, and then we can connect that with the birth of religion in these areas, the technology of self has been very rich in this area. Probably that is one of the resources that can help us in fighting against the onslaught on our cognitive freedom in different ways. Onslaught, yes. AI and genome. AI is nothing. Genome is much more than that. Genome is worse than that. I mean, first time in the human history, it has entered in the inner domain. Till now, it was only the body. First time, the mind is being influenced completely. So maybe we will be cloned here, and will be cloned people sitting here.
Or maybe there is a multiverse where we already exist.
Yes, that's also another thing.
On that note, let us call it a day.
So therefore, my final statement to you, Amir, would be that let us not give emotional response to this crisis. I have a feeling you are very emotional.
AI is the most reasonable response.
I'm sorry, you have a question.
Sir, I wanted to respond to what Anu said. So may I?
हाँ 2 मिनट बोल लो
2 minutes is a long.
You are also one of the.
What, ma'am?
Maybe.
Human Raki should prove.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is some other Rakesh.
That is different. I'm not.
This is different Rakesh.
Sir, the thing that I wanted to tell you, like there is epistemic fallacy in the school of modernism, and there is a kind of like you see epistemic philosophy, like you see epistemic fallacy and ontic fallacy in the school of modernism and postmodernism. There is a clear cut and there is a crystal clear genetic fallacy in your formulation of Indian political theory.
Genetic.
Yeah.
Generic.
That is known as genetic fallacy.
Of what?
Okay, what is that?
Genetic fallacy is that you are trying to conflate some sort of anthropological reality or some sort of sociological reality with the philosophical ontology and the ontological ground from which Indian political theory or Indian philosophy.
Words, you can write that down.
Yeah. And the point is how this is a genetic fallacy and the kind of assumptions and the kind of charges that you are leveling against Indian political theory and Indian philosophy are actually the charges that should be leveled against Western political theories. Because the break from the theological strictures of the past and the coming of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and the Reformation period actually came from the ground what we know as Kantian epistemology. Right. So the way objects were conforming to subjects, and Kant says that there are two realities, that is the phenomenal and the nominal. But since nominal or the thing in itself can't be known by the human mind, so human mind through forms of intuition and through categories of understanding, the object should conform to the subject. So the privileging of subject over the object, what we know as Kantian epistemology in Western political theory. And this led to the whole kind of subject-object dualism, self-object dualism, and Descartesian dualism, and the entire framework. It is true that
Tell me how Indian political is inverting.
yeah.
How is it inverting?
Because the ontological ground
What is that?
from which Kant is making all the kind of theories of morality and categorical understanding and human dignity is.
I got your point, Rakesh, but tell me how Indian political
Yeah, I'm
is inverting that.
I'm telling you because he is grounding these all of them from the ontological ground of phenomena.
Okay.
Indian political theory, in a stark contrast to this, Indian philosophy says that all the grounding and all the theoretical springboards that should come should not come from the ground of phenomenal, but should come from the ground of nominal. Because unlike Kant, who believed that phenomena is there, but it can't be understood, Indian theory, through a basic philosophy and different philosophies, is crystal clear in this, that things in themselves can be understood. And the third layer of ontological consciousness that Indian philosophy is saying, that ontological consciousness is more than global, it is more than cosmopolitan, and the charge that you were levying that it is not global or cosmopolitan, that can't be at all leveled against Indian politics because it is very ontological foundation, it is cosmopolitan.
Just I think
Now you tell me what.
No, my point is,
Yeah.
my point about my opposition.
Yeah.
Indian political theory.
Yeah. What is your opposition?
It's not conclusive. It is indexed.
Yeah.
no, I agree.
Of a rising tide of it. As a result of which, it is easily becoming a handmaiden of a majoritarian status quo.
But the Indian political
Just-
didn't start in 1980s or 1920s.
No, Rakesh,
Why do you give that? Okay.
No.
Rakesh.
I mean, can I just respond to that?
That's fine.
but
Can I just answer your
We can have a debate, yeah.
cosmopolitan thing?
Just
Just one simple thing that, I think I would request you to see the Indian political theory debate not as a mono, but the contextual critique then goes on to, like Mirananda would say, that Gandhi was a bedfellow of communalism. The poor man was fighting communism in Noakhali alone, trying to kind of give his life for that. And she's saying that he's a bedfellow. But there is a problem if we do not differentiate between different streams of argumentation. And there will be a problem. Then it will be kind of bundling everything together. And that will be a big problem.
I mean, this will go on forever.
Mm.
My only point is, can any theory not be contextual? Is any theory non-contextual?
No,
No, but
That is the argument that Skinner is also making.
the context that you are surrendering to in terms of what Indian political thought theory is trying to do whether that is the right interpretation of the context in which it evolved. That is what is being debated.
No,
Actually.
context,
That is,
there are two
that is
contexts.
genetic fallacy.
You are taking the political context.
Genetic
Outside. See, this idea of context, you are taking only the political context. Of,
I'm doing political.
I'm saying, yeah, fine. I'm saying there's a context of Indian struggle from which theory is emerging.
Right.
This is one aspect of this context, which is a state. Probably we are so stated that we think everything is related to the state only. But in the long run, that is not true. So therefore,
The distinction that political and intellectual.
yeah, because I think we have to really create a theory which is coming from this context to fight against anything that we want to fight against. Otherwise, if we take a theory from other context and fighting the context of ours, will not be able to useful. That's what Rammohan Roy suggested. That you really have to understand your context from where the exploitative structure is emerging. And therefore, you have to really go deep into the context of yours.
I won't say more.
Yeah. So,
But we'll continue this.
Anyways, having a
Very nice debate.
September 25th, another whole day of
Indian political theory.
We have
And we're also having this year's CTC on Indian political theory again. It will be.
So thanks a lot to all of you, especially the two